All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome into session number three for the BOMO training. Today we are talking about submittals, and what we're going to call the process. So the couple of items we'll be going through here. Obviously, submittals is a big portion of commercial construction documentation. We're also going to talk a little more in depth about a couple of other important commercial construction documents, and we'll get into those here in a little bit. So this a couple days ago, we just had a bit of an introductory course, kind of going over transitioning from residential or just smaller construction jobs, and then what it's like working under a large general contracting firm, what they're looking for in a good subcontractor, and how how you can identify with the goals of what they're looking for so that you can become a successful subcontractor on a commercial construction site. So a lot of that we talked about was risk and documentation. And so the purpose of this session is to go further into that documentation process. And we will get started. So at any point, feel free. I've got the chat open here on my other screen, so feel free to type any questions that you might have about what I'm talking about in the chat, and I will do my best to respond. And I'll keep an eye on that as we go. So yeah, why is this training matters? You can see I kind of put on the front page there just a big old stack of paperwork. That's what a lot of people think of when they think of commercial construction. It almost becomes less about the the trade and the craft of building it, and more about all the paperwork and red tape that's associated with that. Especially from a general contractor perspective, there is a whole lot of paperwork, and we do that to manage risk. And so if you haven't been a part of one of those projects before, that's going to be the biggest shock coming into it, is how much paperwork you have to do. You can't just be good at being a carpenter or doing sheetrock or plumbing or electrical work. You have to also be very good at the paperwork process and documentation process. So the couple things, yeah, why this is important. We want to be able to navigate all the standard commercial construction documentation that there are, all the different forms and expectations that you're going to have when you sign up a contract for this type of project. And the main reason you want to do that is because it's going to protect your business. Yeah, we want to understand how these documents, are a safety net and protect you against disputes and questions and payment issues, and help you to avoid costly mistakes. So a lot of these things, while they may seem tedious in the performance of them, they can really cause issues down the line if you don't take them seriously. And then, yeah, we're going to dive into pretty deeply into a couple of different ones. That's going to be submittals, RFIs, transmittals, and daily logs. So those are the four big documents that I want to highlight in this session, and we will talk in general about each one of those. And then I have a couple of examples that I pulled off of some ongoing projects I have that we can look at a real example of, and go through what all that looks like. So yeah, this documentation system, that this is the core concept we want to get out of this training session, is it's not just paperwork. It really is protection for the job, and for each individual company. Again, we're managing risk. That is the main component of being a general contractor, is we're managing risk of ourselves, and as a subcontractor, you want to do the same, because you're taking on a lot of that risk from the general contractor, who's taking on that risk from the owner, who's taking on that risk from the bank. And this documentation system is how you manage that. So written records protect you when your memory, isn't there. We all have a lot of projects going on, a lot of people, a lot of things flying back and forth. So the notes that you have, whatever notes you take, your daily log or your submittal, it's not necessarily for you in the moment. It's for you in 3 months, when you don't remember the exact conversation you had. But if you took good notes and your submittal was correct and you had good daily logs, you don't have to remember exactly what happened every day on the job site because you have good documentation. So when you're processing that, you just remember, hey, why am I writing this down right now? I know what happened. It's for you in the future when you don't know, or when you can't remember exactly what happened. So yeah, protection, accountability, communication, and then also payment. So I'm not going to get into a lot of the financial documents. I have a change order and post bid topic later. That's, I believe, the fourth one that I'm doing, and that's where I'm going to get into not only change orders but some of the more financial documents. So today is more about the informational documents that we are going to work on. So yeah, why do we have all this documentation in a commercial setting like this? I have this little meme of Spider-Man pointing at himself. Commercial construction documents are notoriously full of holes. They all, refer to the different sections, and there's going to be holes. There's just going to be also just errors. An architect, and engineers, they're not, they're not almighty. They are going to make mistakes just like the rest of us are. And so because of that, there has to be a large document trail that follows up with that as to what we're actually going to be installing in the field, so that it's not just referring to the contract document set, but there's a submittal set which may differ in products from what is actually written on the construction contract drawings. And that's why we have to do that. So it is really about an information flow. Understanding how all those documents move through the system will kind of help you understand why we have to do all this. Yeah, I do have it. So contract documents they tell you what to build, but the submittals confirm how you're going to build it. RFIs will clarify anything that's unclear, and then transmittals will actually track what you've sent, all the documents you've sent back and forth, and the daily logs document what actually happens on a day-to-day basis on a commercial construction site. So they'll have their own particular purpose to fill in the holes of the contract documents. So when I say contract documents, what I'm referring to there is not only your actual contract, that large, text-based document, but the contractual documents that come with that are going to be your construction drawings, specifications, and then any other drawings or sometimes there's reports. If you do dirt work and things or concrete, there may be a geotechnical report that's going to be part of your contract. That's all the information that you have when you go in to sign a contract. Those represent your contractual documents. And again, there will be holes in that, and that's what you fill in with the submittal. So you start off the project once you sign a contract with those plans, specifications, and reports. From there, the first thing you're gonna do after you have been given a contract is you'll present your submittals. So you're gonna submit on the products that you're providing. If you're doing any kind of fabrication, if say for rebar for concrete, you're going to have shop drawings, and shop drawings is further detailed upon what's shown in the construction contract documents. So, for example, um, if you are a concrete contractor and you're pouring a slab on grade, foundation for a building, there will be structural drawings that you are contracted to, but they may not they may give some general details about what the rebar size is in there, but you as the subcontractor are going to provide shop drawings that further detail exactly where all the rebar is going to be, how it's tied together, where the bends in are at, and you're most likely going to get that from the vendor or you're another subcontractor of yours who's providing all that rebar. So it just is another level of information on top of the contract documents that are more specific and show the very close-up details of what you're actually providing. And then it will go through an approval process that we will get into a little bit later in this, where you as a subcontractor will take your product data and your shop drawings and send them kind of up the chain of command to get approved before you actually purchase and move on with the materials that you're providing. And then after that, once all that's happened, then you're actually clear to install it. So it's not just, hey, the drawing said this, but there is multiple step process to get into that. So let's talk about those four different documents that I mentioned. Submittals. So submittals are product data. There's shop drawings. There's also samples. There's a list of probably 10 different kinds of submittals that you can have, but the main ones you're going to get into are product data, shop drawings, and samples. So all of those are to basically prove that you plan to install materials that meet the specifications of the project that the architect or the engineer has given you up front, and that is part of your contract. And these do require formal review and approval before you proceed with that. And again, we're going to go into each one of these a little bit more. So that's submittals. RFIs. RFIs stand for Request for Information and is basically a formal way to ask a question when contract documents are unclear, incomplete, or contradictory. So these, protect you from making a bunch of assumptions and taking on that risk of a hole that's in the design document. So it's just an official way to document a question when you're unclear about what the contract documents are telling you to do. Transmittals are basically just an official cover sheet that track when you send all these other documents. Um, Later in the presentation, we'll get into some actual project management software that is very common in the larger commercial construction jobs that has almost kind of done away with transmittals. Before most of this was digital, a transmittal was actually printed out and sent with any of this stuff. So we still use it somewhat in the digital age. You need to understand what it is, although it's not quite as important as it used to be. But essentially, it is a cover sheet that says, hey, here's my submittal. Here's when I sent it, and this is you receiving it. This is how I sent it. I mailed it, or I emailed it, or I dropped it off at your office. This is who I sent it to. And it's just a formal documentation that you can keep a piece of because if one day that submittal gets lost or doesn't get returned to you, you have proof that it was actually turned in at the time it was turned in to who it was turned in to. And then the last one we'll go over more in depth is a daily log. So a daily log is kind of like it sounds like. It is just a daily record of who was on site, what occurred, what work was going on, the weather conditions, if you're doing any kind of work that could be affected by weather, and then any particular issues that arose. Really just a complete record of what was going on that day because a lot of stuff happens on a job site daily. And again, it may not be important now, but in 3 months from now, when the job is behind schedule, people are going to start asking questions about what happened, and you need to have documentation about what was actually happening day by day so that you can back up your claims. All right, so now we'll actually start our deep dive into submittals. See, Miss Suzanne said, yeah, who in the company normally prepares the submittal? So that kind of depends on the size of your company. If you have a project manager, that would be who I would expect to be the one actually preparing the submittal. Most of the times, if you're doing a product data submittal or a shop drawing, you're actually going to get those submittals from your vendor. So, say you're an electrician and you are providing a lighting package. So you're providing all the light fixtures for a large office building or whatever commercial building you're building, you're going to be buying all those light fixtures from a supply house. And most all, if not all, of the suppliers, as part of their process, will provide you with the product data of what they're buying. And they actually usually get that from the manufacturer. So it's a multi-chain thing that will start all the way at the manufacturer. When you say, hey, I'm buying 100 light fixtures from you, and I need a product data submittal for that. The vendor will most of the time put that together and say you have three different fixture types, a type A, a type B, and a type C. They'll list what all those are and the specifications and the product data. They'll give you the product data sheets, and then you can take that, make sure it matches what you think you're buying, make sure it matches the contract documents, and then you put your stamp on it, and then you send it on up the chain. Yes, I do have. I see Robert there asked, do I have some templates? I do have a couple of templates. When we get into the daily log section, I've got a couple of those templates that I can go through here and I'll share. That question came up last time. Do I have some templates? I do have a whole kind of bunch of different templates that I've used over my career. I got to get them all combined into a Google Drive or something, and I will share that link out with the group. So, yeah, what submittals actually are. So a submittal is just a formal way of showing the GC and the architect and the engineer exactly your methods and materials that you plan to use. So it's either confirming exactly what they have put in the contract documents, or more than likely, basically every architect and engineer is going to say they're going to provide what's called a basis of design. So again, going back to our electrical example here, they're going to provide a basis of design saying, hey, this light fixture is supposed to be a light fixture that's made by Lutron, and here's the part number for it. That's called the basis of design. But if most of the time they will say or equal. So they've specified a very particular light fixture that they want to go in this office building, but they are allowed to the subcontractor who's providing that is allowed to purchase and supply and install a light fixture that's not that if it is equal to that product. And the way that's determined is by providing a submittal that has all the product data on it. And then that's sent in to the architect and engineer for review. They'll review the product data and say, yeah, this is about the same as the light fixture I specified, and you can provide it. And the reason you may do that is because you may have a really good relationship with a provider that doesn't provide Lutron, but they provide some other light fixture manufacturer that you can get for a lot cheaper, and it's going to save everyone money if we use this light fixture instead of that one. Because most of the time, the architect and engineer who are specifying this, they don't know what everything costs. They pick the coolest looking light fixture, not knowing that it costs $500 when there's another similar light fixture that looks exactly the same, but only costs $250. So yeah, a submittal is just your way of saying, hey, this is exactly what I'm planning on providing. Well, when you mentioned putting our stamp on the submittal, do you mean we should put it on our letterhead or submit it when we submit it to the prime? Yeah, so yeah, when I say putting a stamp on it, I mean literally, again, before everything was digital, most general contractors and definitely all the engineers actually had a physical stamp that they would put on there. And I'll show you that when I get to the examples there. It's now digital. I have a digital stamp that I use that just has like a little disclaimer on it, and then it has a box where it says either, approved, reviewed, rejected, and you can kind of check which one it is. So yes, putting your own letterhead or your kind of cover sheet, your transmittal on the front saying I have reviewed this, um, is a good process to do before you send it on up to the next level, your prime contractor, your general contractor. Is cost required when sending in your submittals? No. So when you're submitting when you're preparing your submittals, I mean, at that point, you've already signed a contract. So the cost of everything is already settled. And now you're just determining, hey, what's the actual product I'm using? Now, if you're submitting, and maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but in the specifications, a lot of times that, we'll say or equal, and there may even be a separate form that you have to submit with your submittals is a substitution request that says, hey, here's a cheaper product that may not be quote unquote equal to the one you have, but if you let me use this, I will give back some money to the owner. Um, so generally, you don't have to provide cost in there. I mean, that's up to you. You've agreed to provide a certain product or equal, and as long as it's approved, you can use whatever you want to. So if it's cheaper, then you technically pick up the cost savings there, unless it is significantly not equal to, in which you're going to want to say, hey, if you use this, the owner gets back a certain amount of money. Um, but you don't normally put cost in the submittal. Um, yeah, so then a critical distinction here about approvals and submittals is that a submittal does a submittal approval does not mean that the design team takes responsibility for your work. You're still responsible for building things to the contract document. So this is always a hotly debated topic, especially when you're submitting something that is different than what the contract documents say. You're still contracted to the contracts of the documents. So if you submit something that is different, you just have to be careful with that sometimes. And a lot of times nowadays you get into where, and I keep getting ahead of myself. Later we'll get into what the different submittal responses are. And sometimes the engineer of record or the architect doesn't even necessarily say approved. They'll just say reviewed because nobody wants to take responsibility for all that. So let's do a little bit deeper dive into the different common types of submittals. So I've said product data and shop drawings. I've said that a whole lot. What are those actual ones? And again, there's probably 9 plus more different ones, but these are the three main ones. And all the other variations are really just small variations of what these three are. So product data. When I say product data, what actually is that? You've heard it, you may hear the word cut sheets or specifications or brochure. It is a official sheet from the manufacturer of the product that you're providing that lists all the individual specifications, technical specifications of that product. So these sheets are what prove the product meets what the architect or engineer wants to be installed. And again, that's how they also determine is it equal to. So if you're not going to provide the exact light fixture or the exact toilet that is specified in the drawings and the specifications, this sheet is what tells you in the case of a toilet, how many gallons per minute or what's the power of the flush and all the different things. That's the engineer will take that information, look at what they specified, look at what you're submitting, and say, does it perform the same, equal to, or better than before they're going to approve it. So some samples of that, yeah, would be if you're providing HVAC equipment, the specifications on that, door hardware, there's a lot of cut sheets on that. If you're an electrician, there's panel schedules that actually show how all the electrical panels are made up, as well as specifications for each of the individual parts, so all the breakers and the wire and everything that you're going to be providing in that. So that's what product data is, and I've got some samples of that we'll show later. Shop drawings. So shop drawings, unlike product data, which is a standard manufacturer product, shop drawings are custom and particular to that one individual job that you're talking about. So they're detailed drawings that show how components will be fabricated and installed. And yeah, they will, again, these are custom, so they're going to go beyond just manufacturer data or even usually go further than just the contract documents show. And they will show project specific details, dimensions, different connections. Most commonly, you're going to get shop drawings in, structural things like concrete, structural steel. Also, if you're doing cabinets or, particular millwork, you're going to want to do that. Because most of the time, if you're providing cabinets, there may be a drawing that shows some real general layout of the cabinets. But you, as the cabinet provider, know there's a lot more to that than just the overall length of the cabinets. And so your shop drawings are going to go into much greater detail about what's the size of the rails and the stiles and the type of door that's on there and the exact dimensions of all the different angles in your cabinets. And you're going to send that upstream to get approved, and that's going to protect you again when you come in and your cabinet may be an inch and a half longer than the overall dimension, but that's because of the size of the cabinets that make it up. You can't do the exact dimension that's on the drawing, and that's why you would turn in a shop drawing to protect yourself from that difference in the contract drawings and your submittals. And then the third type here is samples. So this one's pretty self-explanatory. A sample is obviously a physical example of the material that you're going to provide. So this most often will be required when you are providing finishes of some sort. So if you're a flooring contractor or you're a finished millwork contractor, you're providing, cabinets. They may want to see samples of the cabinet doors or cabinet colors, flooring types, tile. Sometimes paint. If you're a painting contractor, they're going to want to see the architect or engineer of record is going to want to see the actual samples of the different colors you're providing, so that they can verify in person what the selection may actually be. Any questions about those common types of submittals? And really, the fourth most common type of submittal, I didn't list it on here. You might hear it a lot, is just closeout documentations. There'll be closeout submittals. So there really are two rounds of submittals. The first round, which is after you've signed your contract and before you start work, installation work, you're going to provide your initial submittals, which is again these three right here. But then towards the end of the job, there's another smaller round of submittals where you're going to turn in your closeout documentation, and that consists of things like operations manuals for any, again, if you're providing HVAC equipment, those all have owner manuals and you'll turn those in, or maybe warranty documents. So if you're a roofer, you're going to provide whatever the manufacturer's warranty is for the shingle roof that you're installing or the TPO roof that you're installing. You'll turn that in at the end of the project so that ultimately the owner has that information in their hands. So yeah, where do submittal requirements come from? We talked, how do you know, are you supposed to submit a product data or a shop drawing or a sample? How do you know if you're supposed to submit a sample? So, and this could be a whole other class, but there, as I mentioned, your contract documents consist of the drawings. They also will consist of what's called the specifications. And that is just a large book that's divided out by different sections for all of the different trades that make up a construction site. And they go into much greater detail than what's necessarily shown on the drawings. So for this, I've got an example here that will go through the specification, a submittal, um, and an approval of some toilet accessories for a job that I completed recently over in California. So this is section 102813, which is toilet accessories. And this is if you go to this section in the specifications, usually there's a division one, which is just general requirements. And then these are called CSI divisions. And you can just kind of, if you go to Google and search CSI divisions, you can find the list of what all those different divisions are. Division 10 is specialty stuff, which is where our toilet accessories live. So in Division 1, general requirements, a lot of times there's just a general outline of what all the different submittals are. Or if you go to your specific section of whatever trade you are providing for that contract, there'll be within that section a section called submittals. So here it's section 1.4 submittals. And so yeah, it then will generally it says submit under provisions of Division 1. So you got to go read Division 1, but then it tells you the submittals you need, B and C there. So product data. So it wants you to submit data on all the accessories describing size, finish, and details of function and attachment methods. And then it also wants you to submit manufacturer installation instructions. So those are the two things. If I'm providing all the toilet accessories on this job and I sign a contract to do it for, I'm going to come here in the specification section and look up and see, all right, now that I've signed my contract, those are the two submittals that I got to provide, and I have to get those approved before I go buy all those toilet accessories to install. And the specification is a very big document, especially on a large commercial project. I mean, it can be thousands and thousands of pages long. Um, but you just got to know what your division is, and you go find your division in that, and that's what you need to be worried about. The general contractor, let them worry about all the other thousands of pages. This also, let me see actually if I have this will in the specification as well. It'll also detail out more. This is where you see the actual selections I mentioned earlier, the basis of design product. So I believe I have a sample of this. Let me go see. Oh, all right, so this is the actual specification section again for toilet accessories on this job. So it lists related sections, it lists some references. There's the submittals. Usually, section 2 is going to be called products. So this is where it actually lists the manufacturers that the engineer or architect wants you to provide on this project. So if you were to go look at the actual drawings, it may just show, again, we're talking about toilet accessories, so it may just show a toilet paper holder, provide a toilet paper holder, a trash can, and a soap dispenser and a paper towel dispenser. But it doesn't tell you what specifically kinds of that there are. So you come to the specification here, and that's where you see, okay, yeah, they want a Bobrick or American Specialties or Bradley, or if you want to provide a substitution, there's some requirements for that. And then it tells you that it wants this to all be stainless steel. And then some other information here, factory finish. Yeah, they want this all to be stainless steel from Bobrick. So my best thing here to do would be go to Bobrick and find all their stainless steel toilet accessories and submit on that. And that way I know it's going to be accepted. Um, All right, Miss Suzanne asked, what are the possible ramifications if the sub doesn't get the specifications approved before making material purchases? Yeah, that's a very good question. So if you buy all of your materials before you get it approved, there's a large chance that you're going to have to return all that. Or if you can't return it, then you just bought a bunch of toilet accessories that you've got to find something to do with. Because the approval from the design team is your official notice that you can move forward with what you've submitted on. And until you get that, there's no guarantee that what you priced is exactly what they're going to accept. So yeah, it is 100%. And I have a kind of schedule in here in a little bit. After you price all this stuff out, and let me back up a bit more. When you're pricing it out, you want to already be looking in here at this because if, say, you didn't come in here when you were pricing it and you didn't see that they wanted this particular type of toilet paper holder that you're supposed to provide, and you priced the cheapest one possible that you could find, and then this document, this specification is part of your contract. So you signed a contract saying you're going to provide a Bobrick stainless steel toilet accessories. And regardless of what you price, that's what you're contracted to. So now you can submit a substitution, but the architect and engineer and owner are not necessarily under any obligation to accept that substitution. So you need to be looking at this stuff even before you submit it, before you submit your price, because well, after you've been given a contract, you're contracted to provide a certain product, and you submit it. If you've bought all that material and then it doesn't get approved, yeah, I mean that's on you, and you have to figure out how to handle that situation financially. So you definitely want to look at this before. You're going to price it accordingly. You want to submit and you want to get an approval before you actually go and purchase any of this material and get yourself on the hook for paying for all of it. So that's where the submittals come from. And yeah, so now we're going to talk about the actual review chain, because one thing that most people underestimate when it comes to submittals is just how long it takes to get these type of things approved. Again, sticking with my toilet accessories example here, I mean, yeah, you think a toilet paper holder, a paper towel holder, or paper towel dispenser, and a soap dispenser. Not really huge items in the large scale of a big commercial building, but it may take, 6 to 8 plus weeks to get an approval on that, and you have to factor that in before, like I said, you have to have that approved before you buy it, and the lead time on that material may be another 6 weeks, depending on just a lot of different factors. So it may take you 18, 20 plus weeks from the time you sign a contract before you can even get that material. And you need to be thinking about that when you sign up for this as to when you're supposed to have it on site. So in general, and I have a diagram on the next slide that'll show it in a little bit more detail. So subcontractor is going to prepare it, and they may even get that again from the vendor. It's going to go to the general contractor. They're going to review it and put their kind of stamp of approval on it. Then they're going to forward it on to the design team, and the design team is going to review it and again put their stamp of approval on it. Sometimes even from then, it has to go to an owner or another designer before it comes back to the general contractor, and then goes back to the subcontractor for their actual approval. So this is just a little flow chart that shows just how complicated sometimes this can get. So if I can turn a little highlighter here. Yeah, if you can see my mouse here. So um, so here's the project specifications we talked about. That's where the actual requirements for all the products come from. So once you've been given a contract, you're going to come here and you're going to get the actual information from your supplier or fabricator or your manufacturer that you're buying it. They're the best source to get that information from. You can just, Google the product again. If you just want to Google Bobrick stainless steel um, toilet paper holder, you can. But you want to make sure you're getting it from Bobrick's website or whatever the product is that you're providing there. Or if you're buying it through a retailer of some sort, or a wholesale toilet accessories provider, a lot of times they have a relationship with the manufacturer and they'll be able to prepare that submittal for you as to what they are providing. So you get that, and once you've got that, you as the installer or subcontractor are going to make sure that it meets the contractual requirements of what you've contracted yourself to. From there, you submit it to the general contractor. They're going to review it. They're also going to check, hey, does this meet what I bought from the subcontractor, and does it meet what the owner bought from me? And if they think it is good, then they'll send it on to the architect. And the architect, depending on what the product is, they may have to send it to an engineer or a consultant. If it's with sticking with our toilet accessories example here, the architect will probably review that. But if you're an electrician and you have a bunch of panels, electrical panels, or other more detailed things, they're going to send that over there to their electrical engineer or consultant to review. So there's this, and they're going to make some comments on it, and it's going to come back to the architect. The architect then, depending on if it's got finishes in it, the owner may want to look at it, or there may be a regulatory agency that has to take a look at it. So they're going to forward it to them for review. And once they have approved it, it'll come back along all those steps, back to you, back to your installer, and then you'll actually be able to order the material from your supplier before it gets to the job site. So just a simple little thing about, hey, what kind of toilet accessories am I providing has to go through this very long process before you can actually order it, get it on site, and install it. And now that's happening for every single product that's being installed on a commercial site. So last session we talked about creating paperwork problems for a general contractor and why that's a big deal and why they don't want subs who are going to do that is because this process is happening for all the different, 20, 30 plus subcontractors on a job site. So if you're not able to provide a submittal in the form they want it in and the time that they need it in, and it causes a problem, they're not going to want to work with you because again, this is happening not just for you, it's happening for a whole bunch of subcontractors at once. And they want subcontractors who know how to do this process. And this all assumes that nothing gets rejected. So at every single one of these steps, when you're reviewing it, when GC is reviewing it, when the architect's reviewing it, any one of these steps, the submittal could get rejected for whatever reason if you didn't provide the right stuff or if you didn't provide all of it. I think in my review here, there's one where they actually forgot a certain product, and so it had to get rejected and it had to go all the way back and start over. So the more times, the less, if you're not accurate in your submittal or you're incomplete, you're going to get rejected and it's going to have to go back through the process and it's just going to extend it that much further. So let's talk about the approval stamps and all the different responses that you can get on an individual submittal. And again, these are kind of the four most common. There's other ones, and I do have an actual architectural stamp that we'll look at when we get to the example here to see. So the first one and the one you hope to get is just approved, which basically means, hey, you can proceed exactly as you submitted. There's no changes required. And that's the official response back from the architect that you provided what they expected or an equal that they're fine with, and you can proceed. That's the best case scenario. It's very rare to just get 100% approved. The second one is approved as noted. So this one means that there is some small correction to whatever you have submitted, but it's not big enough that they want you to start the whole process over again. And so you can proceed, but you got to see what they noted on there and make sure that you incorporate that when you release that material. So it may be, hey, you provided a chrome soap dispenser instead of a stainless steel, but they liked the product. It was the right manufacturer. You just had the wrong color noted, and so they say, "Hey, this is good. Just make sure to order the stainless steel instead of the chrome." And you have to see that because otherwise, if you don't go look for that note and you just see it says approved and you order what the chrome, when it shows up on site, if it's chrome and it's not stainless steel, and they put that on your submittal, well, you get to reorder all of those soap dispensers. And if you, depending on what your terms are with the vendor, you may not be able to return all that. And now you have 150 extra chrome soap dispensers that you have paid for that you don't have anything to do with. The third option here is revise and resubmit. So this one means, yeah, do not proceed. There's something in your submittal that's wrong that the architect and engineer didn't like, uh, and you got to redo it. So that's going to delay your schedule. It's going to could delay the overall schedule of the project. So you need to address your comments, and send it back. And the fourth one is just straight up rejected, which usually the revise and resubmit will come with a lot of notes on it saying what was wrong and what you need to fix. Rejected just means, hey, this is just completely wrong. You submitted the completely wrong product. It's not at all what we wanted, and you just need to start completely over. It's very similar to revise and resubmit, and really most of the time you get a revise and resubmit, not just a rejected. But rejected is also a possibility, and again, that just means you've done something completely wrong and you got to start over. The fifth one that I didn't put on here, but is one that you will see a lot, it will just say reviewed or no exceptions taken. And a lot of times that's what a architect or engineer will put on there instead of approved, because sometimes they think approved, means that they're taking some responsibility for the design and they don't want to do that. So they're just going to say, yep, reviewed with no exceptions. So if you get a submittal back and it says reviewed with no exceptions or no exceptions taken, it essentially means approved. It's just, a legal way of the architect or engineer responding without saying they really approved it. That always annoys me when they do that, but sometimes they will do that instead of saying it's approved. They'll just say it's been reviewed. So now we're going to talk about the submittal timeline and why they matter. So we've looked at where do we get the submittals from, and the actual process of submitting it and getting it reviewed and getting it approved back. And I've already kind of mentioned this, but this timeline of getting your products submitted and approved and back to your vendor for ordering, it can easily take 10 weeks or more, just to get it all reviewed. And that's a huge timeline in there, especially if your product is not something that is just right off the shelf. If it has a lead time to it, you got to add that 8 to 10 weeks to however long it takes you to get the product. And you have to know that up front, because usually when you sign a contract, you have a time that you're supposed to be on site with your product. And you have to know how quickly you need to order your product so that you can have it in time to be on site. And if you've never done the submittal process before, you may not realize you have 8 to 10 weeks of just review before you can even order it. So that's a huge thing. Not only can it delay you, it can delay the overall project. And again, going back to our conversation earlier this week, that's what a general contractor is looking for. Hey, is this subcontractor, are they going to slow us down? Are they going to create a paperwork issue? Are they going to slow us down? This is the easiest way to slow a project down right from the beginning. And it's before you've even showed up on site. So if you're really good at what you do, you can be the best toilet accessory installer on planet Earth. But if you can't get your product there on time and you delay the project, then you're off to a bad start. So that you really got to take the submittal process there pretty seriously. I'm gonna let's see. All right. So some common mistakes that you get into with submittals. The first is submitting generic data. So when you provide a product, a lot of times, if you're just going online and trying to find the product data yourselves, sometimes it can be kind of hard depending on the product you're providing and the vendor or manufacturer you're buying it from. They may have all this information on their website. It may be difficult to find, or it may not be its own individual sheet. It may be lumped in with a larger product catalog. And if you just take that whole product catalog and submit it, it's going to get rejected because there's a whole bunch of information in there that's not actually applicable to what you're providing. So you want to make sure that what you're submitting is exactly what you are submitting, doesn't include a bunch of other products. And if it does, if the only sheet you can find or the only sheet that the vendor provides is one that lists 10 different products on it, you want to make sure that you're highlighting or, you know, clouding in some way, identifying on that sheet, hey, I know there's 10 products on here, but I'm highlighting the one, this is the one I'm actually providing. And here's the finish of it. You want to make sure that if there are finish selections or different dimensions of the same product, that you're showing on that sheet which ones you are actually providing. Um, Second common mistake here, yeah, is ignoring the submittal log or ignoring what you're actually supposed to submit on. So either a submittal log, which is just a summation of the all the submittal requirements from the specifications. So either your certain specification section or the submittal log. If you don't look at that and see what all different submittals you're supposed to provide, that's going to cause some confusion and some delay. If you're supposed to provide product data and installation instructions, like we saw in that specification, and you only submit the product data, well, your submittal may get delayed or may get rejected and said, hey, you only submitted one thing. Or even if they approve that one, say, hey, your product data is approved, but you didn't submit the manufacturer's installation instructions. We need to see that before you can start. So you need to make sure that you understand not only what you're submitting, but what different submittals you are required to submit. And it's best to send them all in at once rather than kind of dripping them in over a long period of time, because that's a good way to get some of them lost. Third common mistake here is just waiting too long. Again, if you don't understand how long it takes to approve some of this, you may think you have more time than you really do. Say those Bobrick stainless steel um, paper towel dispensers, you know that they're on the shelf and you can go pick them up anytime you need to. So you don't think about putting your submittal together until it's about 2 weeks before you have to be on site. And then the general contractor says, hey, I know you're about to be here, but you haven't given me your submittal yet. You give that submittal to them, but it takes 8 weeks for that review to get through. Well, when it's time for you to show up, you can't go by that because you hadn't gotten your submittal approved yet. So you got to make sure you understand the process and you get that in as early as possible. No general contractor will ever have an issue with you submit your submittals early. As soon as you have a signed contract, it's best to go ahead and start working on that. Number four, incomplete information. This is kind of the same as the generic one. So just making sure that if there are selections or different calculations, whatever it is of the product that you are supplying, that you have selected or shown in some way on that document what all the different options are and which ones you are actually providing. It's very common that a product data sheet will have multiple areas where there might be different dimensions or different color finishes or multiple selections of anything, and you have to highlight the ones that you're providing because it may be the same product that just has different finishes and it doesn't have necessarily a different product number. You just got to highlight which one you're getting. And then the fifth common mistake there, again, as I mentioned, not reading review comments. So if you get that approved as noted back, you really got to go make sure, hey, what is the note they provided? 'Cause sometimes it may not matter. Sometimes it may be a big difference in what they've noted there, and it will affect what you're ordering. So you really got to make sure that when you see that, that you go find out what the note is before you start ordering materials, and definitely before you start installing anything. Yeah, so a misconception about approvals, and as I said earlier, a lot of architects now don't even necessarily say approved, they just say reviewed. Um, but ultimately, an approval on your submittal doesn't necessarily relieve you of your contractual responsibility to provide what the contract drawings say. Um, it just is an approval of exactly what you are submitting on. So you are ultimately responsible for making sure that what you're providing meets your contractual requirements to do so. And just because you have a submittal that's approved doesn't necessarily mean that you're 100% clear if it's different than what the contract drawings show. That could be a dispute that you get into with the general contractor. All right, so I want to show you a couple of actual submittal here. Let's go look at. All right, so we're back on the specifications section for for my toilet accessories for this job. Um, Scroll back up here. So there's the submittals. I need product data and I need manufacturer's installation instructions. And then it does say submit under provisions of Division 1. So I also have the Division 1 section of the specifications here. And I won't necessarily read this entire thing because it's a long document, but there are some other requirements here. It lists all the different kinds of submittals that they expect on this job. And then here it is. It tells you the actual procedures. So this tells you how to actually submit it. So they want it in an electronic file. They don't want you mailing it in. Um, there's a form that goes with it. You want to number them. You got to identify the project, contractor, subcontractor, or supplier on all the drawings. Then with the contractor to stamp it. There's a lot of different requirements here. So just another good area to go read and make sure that when you are submitting your submittal, that it meets all these requirements. So this is the actual submittal that we're going to look at here. Toilet accessories from section 102813. This is submittal number 68. Now the general contractor is the one who numbers that. Not the subcontractor. So you don't necessarily have to worry about that. You just worry about, hey, what am I submitting? And the general contractor is the one who will number all those and turn them in um, to the architect for review. So this front page right here is the transmittal. So it's the cover sheet, and it says who it's written to, says what the revision of this particular submittal is, says who the responsible contractor is, the date it was issued on, the due date for this one. It lists the specification, the type of submittal that this is, and it says who the approvers are, and then who all else has been copied on this submission. So I know we haven't gotten into the transmittal section of it, but this is what a transmittal is. Now, most of the digital project management tools you'll use will kind of automatically generate that, so you don't have to go out of your way to do it. But that's what a transmittal is. So now we're going to scroll down a little bit. So this is the cover page again of the submittal. Well, before we actually read those. So this is the actual subcontractor. So JW Prefabricated Specialties, they're the ones who put together this submittal, and they actually put their own little cover page on here, which is a great thing to do. So they say that's the date they submitted it. There's the project name. That's who they're sending. That's the general contractor that they sent it to. They showed how did they give it to the GC. They emailed this one. And then, yeah, they said, hey, what all is included in this package? They said, here's the submittals. This is the submittals for this job. We emailed it on this date. Then scroll down a little further. Here's the list of everything that's in this submittal. I got grab bars of different sizes. I got mirrors, seat cover dispensers, toilet paper dispensers, soap dispensers, all the different things. And they actually listed how many of each one of those that they're going to provide. That's what that is, the quantity of how many of these are. And then here is an actual cut sheet. So we can see that they provided Bobrick, which is good. That was one of the manufacturers that was listed in the specification as an acceptable one. And it is a stainless steel grab bar, so they got that right. That's the part number, and then here's the actual drawings of this particular grab bar. It shows the mounting configuration, all the different. So here's the selection. You can select if this is a horizontal one or a vertical one, and they have different dimensions down here. These are the different lengths of it. So they've highlighted this is going to be horizontal, and we're providing the 42-inch and the 48-inch. So they made sure to select which ones they were actually going to submit here. This is just more information from the manufacturer. And then again, same thing. So we won't necessarily go through every single one on here, but here's again, the Bobrick stainless steel mirror. And as you can see on here, they have a bunch of different sizes and they've done a good job highlighting, hey, here's the one I'm actually providing. It's the 24 by 36-inch mirror. And it lists the part number out there so that the architect and engineer can review that and make sure it's what they want. And also, it comes with installation instructions on the same sheet. So the subcontractor did a very good job of providing exactly what it said to in the specifications so that they could get approved pretty quickly. All right, so now that was the submittal. This is actually a full package that's already been reviewed. So I'm going to scroll back up at the top and we can see see what the response was. So here's the stamp. I know there's some questions earlier about what a stamp is. So Lionakis is actually the architect who specified and drew these drawings and wrote the specification section. And this is their stamp. So it says architectural submittal review stamp. And you can see there's the options. You can see that don't actually say approved anymore. They just say no exceptions taken. There's a revise and resubmit. There's a rejected. And then there's also a note markings. So no exceptions taken is kind of the approved. Note markings means approved as noted. And you can see this one actually got rejected. So even though it looked correct, it was rejected. And here's the notes from the architect of what was it rejected for. So it turns out that he was actually missing the mop and broom holder in all the janitor rooms. And then the architect showed on here, hey, these are the rooms that are specified for. So you need to make sure to include that in the submittal before I'm going to approve it. And then he also put a note down here that the paper towel dispenser was inadvertently not shown on the accessory schedule. Um, they're going to basically produce a new drawing that shows that, and it was missing from these rooms. So he wants us to resubmit the cut sheets for the missing items listed above. And that's why we're going to have to revise and resubmit on this. Now, I picked this particular one because this is another lesson to learn about submittals, and I didn't particularly call it out in my lessons learned, but so that there's two notes on here that the architect showed. First one is that we were missing a mop holder that was shown on the drawings, right? That's a legitimate reason to get rejected for. That was on the contract drawings. We didn't provide the product data for it, so they said, hey, revise and resubmit with that product information. That's fine. We should do that. The second paragraph here, and they said it in a way that's kind of tricky, but the architect didn't show the paper towel dispensers on the contract drawings, and they want us to provide a submittal for that. That's great, but also that's a change in scope. If it wasn't shown on the contract drawings, then we probably didn't price the paper towel dispensers, and we don't want to submit on the paper towel dispensers because it's not in our contract. So if I'm from the subcontractor who is providing these toilet accessories and I get this back, I'm going to respond back to the general contractor and say, yeah, I'll provide an updated submittal that has the mop and broom holder that I missed. Um, and I'll even provide an updated submittal for this paper towel dispenser, but I'm also going to provide you with the change order because this paper towel holder wasn't shown on the contract drawings, and so it wasn't in my price, and I'm not going to just buy it for free. So I'll update my submittal, but I'm going to also provide you a change order for what these paper towel dispensers are going to cost and add that to my contract. This is actually a pretty common thing that'll happen is that a owner or architect or engineer will make a comment in a submittal that possibly has cost implications. And is it, again, another reason why you want to make sure you're really reviewing your submittal comments because it could cost you money if you don't read it correctly. So if I didn't read that correctly and I just provided a new submittal for those paper towel dispensers and then they got approved, um, now, technically, you're still not contracted to it, but a lot of general contractors may look at it and say, well, hey, you provided this middle, said you were going to provide this, and you're going to get in a battle now when you ask them for the cost of those extra four paper towel dispensers. So it's best to read those comments, make sure you respond accordingly, and send a change order to that. Now, change orders is a whole other topic we'll get into later, but just something to always keep an eye out as to why you should review these submittals correctly. Right. And then also, I am going to show you, we're going to get a little into to the project management software later, but I do want to show you um, one thing. So this is Procore, which is a particular type of software management or project management software that's pretty common throughout the industry. This is the submittal log portion of it. So there's a lot of Excel templates that you can use for a submittal log. As a subcontractor, you probably don't have a submittal log or need to worry about your keeping your own one. Am I taking a break? Yes. Let me finish this little section in about 3 minutes, and then we'll take a quick break. But I just wanted to show what a specification log, or sorry, a submittal log would look like. So I filtered this down to just show the toilet accessory. So you can see that was the one we just looked at where we submitted it, and then later we did resubmit on the toilet accessories. It included those ones that we missed. I'm gonna clear this filter here, and you can actually see how many submittals this project had. Now, this is a small county building. It's actually a county jail and a receiving center. It's not a very large project, but I mean, let's sort this by numbers here. So 201. There's actually 268 individual submittals on this one project. So there's a whole lot of information that the GC is having to sort through here. Going to sort it by specification section because that's a good way to view this. Actually, hold on, let's do this. So this is just a good way to see how many of these submittals a general contractor is providing. So CMU, there was 11 submittals. Structural steel, there was four. Metal fabrications, there was four. Architectural woodwork, there was four items. Again, 268 individual submittals on this entire job. So again, just a reason why you want to make sure your submittal is correct and you make it easy on the general contractor to review and approve quickly because they're dealing with a whole bunch of these. And if you're the problem child continuously, again, it looks bad on you. And when you get to the end of that job, they're going to not want to work with you again. So, I believe that's all I had for submittals. And then the next couple sections we'll get into are the other documents. So yeah, let's just take a quick 5 minute break or 4 minute break. It's 11:11, so I'll be back here at 11:15. Bathroom break, grab some water, stand up, and if you do, type it in the chat there, and we can talk more about that before we get into RFIs and some other documents here. So I'll give it a minute to let everybody get back and then see if we got any questions before we move on. Comment at one. Oh, okay. So once work begins, if an item in the specifications proves to perform it adequately, what is the sub's recourse? Yeah, so I guess you're asking if there was if a particular product will be providing templates or forms for the paper. Yeah, I do have some templates that I can share with the group later. Submittals doesn't really have much of a template. It's really, you get all the information. I guess if you want a template for a cover sheet, yeah, that's really a transmittal. And yes, I do have a template for that that I could share with the group. So going back to Miss Suzanne's question, yeah, if work begins and an item in the specifications proves to perform inadequately. So what's the sub's recourse? So I guess you're asking there if if there's a particular product that was shown in the contract documents and it turns out it just doesn't work for whatever reason. Um, that you one you're gonna if you submitted on it and it got approved and it's in the contract documents, then you have every right to go back to the general contractor and ask for a change order at that point. So, trying to stick with our toilet accessories there, say, I don't know if I can come up with one for toilet accessories, but um, yeah, say they provided in the contract documents, they wanted one that mounts on the toilet partition. And then later, I don't know, they removed the toilet partition because it was a single bathroom. It didn't need any toilet partitions. And so you had to mount it to the tile. And this particular product just doesn't mount to a tile wall. It was only meant to mount to a toilet partition. Well, that's a change in the contractual documents. And the architect a good architect is going to provide an updated drawing. And if it changes what you are providing, then the general contractor, will send it to you and say, hey, here's a change in the contractual documents, and let me know if you have any change in cost. And you're going to review that. A lot of times that is called an ASI, which stands for Architect's Supplemental Instructions. And you're going to look at that and say, yep, my toilet paper holder is different. And now the one I have to provide, it actually costs $50 more per unit. And it takes 6 weeks to get. So you would respond to the general contractor and say, yeah, I see that they changed the toilet paper holder to a different one. It's $50 more. I'm providing four of them. So, here's my change order for that amount. Um, and once that gets approved, then you can go, oh, and I already bought the other ones. So you got to pay for those as well, because it's not your fault that the documents changed. So the owner is going to pay for all that material, and hey, here's the other four. They're going to be spares for you. Um, so that kind of fits in more with a little bit of like change orders and how things change afterwards. But yeah, um, you do want to make sure that you're looking for those changes in documents. And a good general contractor should be letting you know when documents change or when a contract changes, and giving you the opportunity to review that and let them know if you have any changes in your contract that need to flow back up the hill. Okay, so if there's no other questions on that, we're going to move on to RFIs. So what is an RFI and when should you use it? An RFI is a request for information, and it is a formal tool for asking questions when the contract documents are unclear, incomplete, or contradictory. Um, and that happens a lot more often than you think it would. RFIs protect you from making assumptions, and again, they help you manage your risk in the project, and in turn, also help the general contractor manage his risk. So yeah, the key word here being formal. So you can ask questions all you want to. You can send an email or a text or talk about something on site with a superintendent or a foreman about how you should do something. Um, but you really need to have a sense of, hey, when am I just talking about a method of how I should do something versus when am I talking about something that is going to contractually obligate me to do something? And if it's the latter there, if it's the second, you really want to formally document that question with an RFI. And there's multiple ways to do this. Again, in the kind of before the digital age, you would literally just have a form. It was a Word document or an Excel template where you would write your question in and you would hand it to the general contractor and they would, put it in a book and move forward. In today's world, it's mostly all digital, and we will get into some of those project management tools just very briefly so you can kind of be familiar with them. But at minimum, you can send an email. It's good for you to have a form if there is not a project management software that you're required to use. I do have just a small RFI template form, and it really is just a form that says, what's the project? What number RFI is this for you? What drawing or contract document does it refer to? And then what's the question? And then what's a proposed solution? And it's just a little Word document that you can send. You can email it to the general contractor, whoever your contact is there, for them to answer that. Um, so yeah, RFIs create a paper trail showing you identified a problem, you asked for clarification, and then you received an official answer from either the general contractor or the architect and engineer or possibly the owner of the project, just depending on the nature of what the questions are. RFIs, yeah, are not about admitting you don't understand the work. It's about ensuring everyone is on the same page. Uh, that little Spider-Man meme I had on there. It is true. A lot of documents they have different sections, they have different engineers, and even though there is an overall architect that is in charge of the whole plans, there may have been four different engineers who drew different sections of that, and they said, "Hey, refer to another section of drawings," and that drawing says refer to another section, and it's very possible that there are just things that aren't specified enough in there or are conflicting, and it's much better to ask the question and get it documented rather than make an assumption and just move on with it. Because if you make that assumption by yourself and you build it, it may be wrong, and then you're on the hook financially for fixing it. So a couple of times when you should write an RFI, when the plans and specifications contradict each other. You can also say when different drawings contradict each other, when dimensions are wrong or don't add up, when details are missing or unclear, when the field conditions, the existing conditions of the site differ from what the drawings show, or when a specification or drawing requirement is vague, and doesn't give you enough information to properly proceed with the installation. Those are all examples of when you should ask a formal RFI. Yeah, when not to use an RFI. So RFI, a very useful tool. It's not for everything. Yeah, pricing. So there usually is a particular substitution form that you can provide with your submittal about price shopping. That's not something that really belongs in an RFI. Schedule items. Yeah, so asking a question about when work is supposed to happen, or coordination with other subcontractors. That's not an RFI. That really is more communication you're going to have about the schedule. And then, yeah, just basic coordination items. Those are things you don't want to get into an RFI about. Uh, General contractors love subcontractors who write RFIs, but they want them to be about things that RFIs should be about and not these type of things. So yeah, they specifically revolve around conflicts and ambiguous topics in the contract documents. Anything outside of that is not an RFI. Excuse me. How RFIs protect subcontractors. Excuse me, I had to take a sip of water. They create a paper trail. So when you submit an RFI, you have formally documented that you think there's an issue with the contract drawings and you've sought clarification before. Um, as I mentioned in the previous training session, it's not really a matter of if, but more a matter of when you could possibly get involved in some kind of legal battle with a owner or general contractor. And all these paper trails are the things that will help you in that instance. Again, it's not necessarily for you right in the moment. It's for you 3 to 6 months from now when you don't remember the conversation you had on site about how to do something. If you're going to do something that is different than the contract documents, you need to formalize it with an RFI. Say, hey, this is different, and let the owner or the general contractor or the engineer and architect give you the answer so that you have some official paper trail to say why you did something that was different. So it creates that paper trail, and that paper trail transfers risks. Again, we're all risk managers here. If you've identified a problem, you transfer the risk off of yourself and put it on someone else to give you an answer as to why you should do something different in the contract documents. It also documents time impacts. So if you get to a point where you're installing and you reach something that is unclear in the contract documents and you cannot proceed until you have an answer to this, that's an important thing to not only document, but also say that in the RFI when you submit it to the general contractor to say, hey, I can't proceed. I can't go to the next step. My crews are at a standstill until we get a clarification on this inconsistency in the drawings. So, or hopefully you're doing it before you get there. You say, hey, if we don't have this answer in a week, my crew is going to be out of work. And so when you give that to them, that gives them some urgency to be able to go and get that answer for it. But also, if that week comes and goes and they haven't answered it, you can rightfully pull your guys off the job and with some documents that says, "Hey, I asked you this question a week ago, and I told you at that time that if I didn't have an answer by the Friday, that I was going to be out of work and I couldn't proceed." So when you have to leave and come back, and if that costs you extra money, you have some backup and some documentation to show how that happened and why you shouldn't be the one that's responsible for paying those. That protects you. It also protects the general contractor, because most of the time, if it's delaying you, it's delaying them. And if it is a issue with the contract documents, then that's something that they shouldn't be responsible for either. They're going to want to go get money from the owner for that. And if you didn't provide them that information in timely fashion, they can't go get it, which means you're not going to get it, and it's bad for everybody. It also prevents assumptions. So yeah, writing an RFI forces you to kind of say the problem clearly and identify it, and helps the whole team to get on there and identify a solution rather than just the subcontractor saying, "Oh, I've seen this before. I know what to do. I'm just going to do it because it's easier." But then if something is wrong about what you did, you don't have any backup as to why you did it. And now, again, you're financially responsible for whatever you did that was different than the contract documents. So these are a couple of tips for writing effective RFIs. Excuse me. Number one, identifying the issues clearly. So make sure that when you do it, the best case scenario is you provide a copy of the actual drawing that you're talking about, or you at least list it on the RFI form. It says, "Hey, this is about drawing S101, and it's about a certain detail on S101. It's detail 2 on S101." Or you have a picture or a screenshot of that one sheet and you've clouded, circled, or highlighted in some fashion. This is the detail that I'm talking about here, and it's vague, and I need an answer on it. So you want to make sure that you're clearly identifying where in the contractual documents that this issue is. You want to explain why it's important that you get that information. Um, so again, this could be a time thing. You just want to describe the impact to the overall project as to why this needs to get identified and answered properly. Number three is a big one here, and it's the best way to make sure that you get an answer quickly, and it makes sense, is propose a solution if possible. So if you see something in the drawings that looks wrong, that has to do with your trade, and you know the way to fix it, don't just fix it. You need to write an RFI, but you're more than welcome to propose the solution to the architect or engineer and say, "Hey, I see this is wrong, but I can do X, Y, Z, and that'll fix it." And if you do that, that gives the architect and engineer a very easy way to just say, "Yes, I approve of that." Because if you leave it very open-ended, you don't know how long it's going to take to get a response. And if it's a time-sensitive thing that may delay your schedule or your ability to proceed with work, you're going to get a much quicker answer if you propose a solution or multiple solutions, that the architect and engineer can just rubber stamp, as opposed to having to come up with something on their own. Also, a lot of times, depending on what the issue is that you're writing about, it may not be a thing that an architect on paper can solve easily. It might have to do with field conditions, and they're not the ones out there, you are. So it's very good if you can provide a little solution that will be helpful for them to come up with. Number four, include supporting documentation. So yeah, pictures are great. Sketches on drawings are great. Any other evidence that illustrates what's going on. The more supporting documentation you can have with an RFI, the easier it is for everybody to answer, the easier and quicker it is to get an answer and to move on with the work. Number five, making sure that you're actually requesting a specific response. So don't just say, "Hey, this is wrong," and then leave it at that. You want to say, "Hey, if we're if we're talking about a concrete, a slab on grade, just you want to call out specifically what it is and say, hey, the elevation of this slab is wrong. Here's why I think it's wrong. And I need to know what the finished elevation of this slab is supposed to be so that I can proceed with my work. I want to be very specific with what the actual answer is that you're looking for. Otherwise, you open yourself up to getting a vague response and then not really clearing up the issue, and you got to ask again. So these are some common mistakes when submitting an RFI that can end up costing you and the general contractor time and money. One is asking too late. So earlier in my example there, I said, you want to make sure to list schedule impact in an RFI if there is one. And hopefully you aren't saying with your RFI, I am currently delayed, because you, as a subcontractor and as the kind of subject matter expert for your trade, should be looking at the drawings before you're actually out there installing it and would hopefully see any issues before they are currently delaying you. So you want to make sure that you're reviewing the drawings before you go. So when you get out there, you aren't just immediately saying, hey, this is wrong and I can't do anything until I get an answer. That's not a good look for you. It doesn't give the general contractor a lot of time to sort out the issue. And architects, they hate it too when they get an RFI that comes in and says, hey, I'm already delayed. So make sure you're looking at your documents ahead of time and asking questions before you get out there, so that you aren't asking too late and causing schedule delays. Second common mistake here is bundling multiple questions together. So to the best of your ability, you want to make sure that you're asking individual questions that have individual answers. If they're very heavily related, maybe you can keep them together. But if you're asking questions that are about completely different areas of the building or different, say you have multiple trades, you're doing framing and siding, and you ask questions about, framing and siding questions all in one RFI, it's going to get messy. And it may be that the answer comes from different people. One of them may be about a finish related question that the owner wants to approve, and the other one may have to go to one of the engineers consultants. So if you put it in one question, it's going to take a lot longer to get the answer back. So make sure that you're putting one question per RFI, unless they are just completely tied together. It's best to always make sure one RFI represents one scope and one question. So that's the easiest way to get your answer back in an appropriate time. Uh, Two more mistakes here. Yeah, being vague. Um, kind of goes on to what the point I had earlier about just making sure you're asking for the answer that you need and not just pointing out something's wrong with no other direction. And then number four, not following up. So when you submit an RFI, you're going to want to make sure to follow up on that, especially if you give a timeline, say, hey, I need this in a week. I'd follow up in about half that time. So if they've got 7 days to answer it, if you're about 3 or 4 days into it, I'd be asking the general contractor, hey, have you made sure you forwarded that to the architect? Just reminding you, I've now got 3 days left before I'm delayed on this. So it's good to poke those. Same thing, I've got an RFI log here that I'll show you on a little bit, but as many submittals as there were, there's just as many RFIs on a project, and a lot of times an issue can get lost, or just not followed up on correctly. So if it's important to you, you want to make sure that you're following up on that issue with the general contractor. Not in an annoying way necessarily, but just being attentive to the issues. All right, so I'm going to pull up Procore here, and we're going to review an actual RFI for that same project that we were looking at earlier. So RFI number 45. Let's go pull this up. Excuse me. So just to show you an example here. So this is a project that's been going on for a while, again, over in California. They're on RFI number 165. So there's no small amount of these questions that are coming and going very frequently. And again, all the more reason why you want to make sure you're specific. You give correct information to the general contractor because they're managing these RFIs for every subcontractor that's on site. So I'm going to go to number 45 here. So the this actually had to do with my company, which is the reason why I pulled this one out here. But the electrical contractor here asked, "Hey, on in the contractual drawings, security room number 113 is laid out differently in two separate details. They listed the details. They said E 512 detail number 3, and then SE, sheet 6.1 detail 1. Which one of these is the correct equipment layout for this room?" So they were pretty specific with their question. They called out the room number. They said what the issue was. It's got two different layouts in it. They listed the drawings that were conflicting, and the question is, hey, which one of these is correct? The attachment here is just the actual form that they submitted to that the electrical contractor used to submit to the general contractor. And then on So there's the information requested. That's the question here. Um, and then here's the response from the architect is that the layout of the room 113 is correct as shown on this one. So detail 1 on sheet SE 6.1. And then he actually provided a reason why. He said the equipment layout on detail 3 of sheet E512 shows the equipment room layout from an earlier set of drawings that wasn't updated correctly. And so now the architect is probably going to update that drawing, but he said, yep, hey, we forgot to update the layout of that one. So use the layout of that's shown on drawing SE 6.1 detail 1. You can see the date it was submitted and then the date it was answered. So about 10 days later, it took to get that answer out before they could move on. So on Procore here, this is basically the transmittal. This is showing everything, all the information about this one, the RFI number, who it was received from, who the assignee was, who the question ultimately went to there. This Jeff Smith guy is the electrical engineer who answered the question, showed when it was distributed, who it was created by, and then who the responsible contractor was. So that's the electrical contractor that was answering that question. Any particular questions about RFIs before we move on to the next one? Okay. So transmittals, again, are not quite as important as they used to be because most of the digital tools we use nowadays basically make these transmittals for you. But you'll hear that word a lot, and I just wanted everyone to know what it was. So when you hear that, you have a concept of what a transmittal is. And yeah, as I written on here, essentially it's just a sophisticated cover sheet that documents exactly what you're sending, who you're sending it to, when and why you sent it, and then what action needs to be taken from that. Um, so what a transmittal tracks, yeah, it tracks the timing of when you submitted something, and it proves that you delivered the documents and how you delivered it. Did you email it to them? Did you send it by certified mail? Did you hand deliver it to them? It goes into what the content of whatever it is that you're handing over to the general contractor is. So it'll be a detailed list of if it's a package of submittals, here's all the submittal numbers that I'm submitting to you, or if it's a sample, hey, here's 5 samples of tile, and here's the different colors that I'm giving to you. I gave it to you on this date. Here's who I gave it to. I gave it to the general contractor. I gave it to the project manager of the general contractor, and here's his name. And then the purpose, this was a submittal that was required of me. It's a physical sample, so I had to hand it to you in person, and this is proof that I did it. And you may even have a spot where everyone signs it, and you each keep a copy of it. It's essentially a glorified receipt showing that you did what you were supposed to. So in the case that that project manager that you handed all the tile to, in case he loses that tile or for whatever reason doesn't give it to the engineer or the architect to review, that you have proof that you gave it to them when you needed to. So if some problem arises, you have some backup. Again, it's more just if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. This is an official way of writing down when you do things. That's really all I'm going to go into about transmittals. Again, most of the digital tools we use today kind of generate that for you automatically. But if you are handing something in person, it's a good thing to just write it down formally and keep it in your project records for your own purposes. The next document we'll talk about here is a daily log. Um, and daily log is again a super simple document. There you can just Google construction daily log template, and there's 1,000 different templates out there. I have a couple here again that I'll share with you. They don't have to be complicated. The much more important thing about a daily log is the consistency in which you do it, and less so the template in which you do it in. Just the fact that you are doing it and you're doing it consistently and every day you're on site is the most important thing. So what is a daily log, and kind of what's the purpose of it? So a daily log, as it says, it just documents everything that happens on a construction site for a particular day. And it does seem like busy work. A lot of foremen, if you have a lot of labor working for you, the last thing they want to do at the end of the day is write down everything they did. Um, as I've said multiple times, it's not for you in the moment. It's for you multiple months from now when you have a dispute with a general contractor or with an owner about what happened and how it got there. If you didn't write all this down, you're just going off of memory. And we all like to think we have a great memory until we're in a courtroom and they're asking very specific questions about what happened on a very specific date. And it's very hard to remember that. Sorry, so that's what a daily log is. So why does it matter and what should be on there? It happens. It's important for payment disputes, schedule claims, disputes on scopes of work, and liability issues. All those things are things that don't happen in the moment, but could happen, multiple weeks or months later down the chain in a construction project, and it's very handy to have all of this. Some general contractors, or every general contractor, will be doing their own daily log about what happened on the site as in totality. Um, but it's very highly recommended that you, as a subcontractor, do your own daily reports to make sure that you are capturing what you did, and because it may be slightly different than what the general contractor said. Some general contractors require you to turn in, as a subcontractor, require you to turn in a daily log to them. Some don't. Even if they don't, I still encourage every subcontractor I work with to keep their own daily log reports, again, for their own purposes here. So I've got a couple examples of daily logs, and I want to talk a little bit about what all should be included in them. Let me wait, actually, hold on. So this is a very simple daily log report, again, from my own company here. It was a project we were doing in Washington County. All it really lists here, this is the most basic thing. It lists, hey, the project number, project name, the date that this has occurred, and then a description of work performed on site. And so this was one of my technicians who wrote down everything he was doing that day. He was trying to fix a camera, and he listed some issues with it. He listed some other things that he installed. These are all security electronics equipments. He did some markups on the drawings, installed another camera, and then he also said, hey, at this point, as of 8/11/25, all the cameras on site were installed. He wrote down his name, who was there, and how many hours he was on site. That is basically like the minimum amount of information you want to record to have a good daily log. And again, you can see this doesn't have to be a complicated form. I do have some other forms here that I've used in the past. So here's a daily report form. And again, all the kind of same information on here, project name, project number, who wrote this down, where you're at. There's the general information you want to see, the number of workers who were on site, if you had any trade partners on site, or if you had any other visitors, some consultants or vendors that showed up, where they were there, how many hours they spent. You want to record the weather. Again, if you have, if your trade can be affected by weather, you want to make sure you're writing that down. A lot of contracts have certain certain clauses about how much delay you can claim based on weather. And if you're not writing down what the actual weather is on the site, you may lose your ability to go claim some delay days on that. So then here's the kind of work activities. So this is, what you are doing that day. There's work in progress. You can write challenges or other significant milestones that you're coming up upon. There's a section for material and equipment. So if you received any deliveries of materials, or if you have a certain piece of equipment on site, if you have a forklift or you have any other piece of construction equipment, you can write, hey, I had it, it got damaged or it didn't get damaged. You can write down inspections that you had, whether these are inspections from a general contractor or a county or city inspector came and they did an inspection there. There's a section for safety to write down, injury, any injury or safety related things that happened. Um, Budget and resources. I don't normally write down budget things, but if you want to write down something, there could be there. And there's usually a review and sign off that just says, hey, this was reviewed by the project manager and accepted. This is a pretty detailed form, probably too detailed. You don't want it to be this detailed because it gets harder to write down. I like to keep it simple, but that is an option. Again, you can find 100 templates online, and I'll provide some as well. I do want to show one other thing. So yeah, now we've kind of talked a lot about in depth the individual documents and just to give an example of how these all work together. Um, so obviously you got your contract documents, you're going to sign your contract, you're going to review the plans and identify the details that, show the work that you're pricing. And it's good to ask RFIs right up front. So you sign your contract and you see some things before you even get on site that are going to affect your scope of work. You submit that RFI, you wait for a response, you get an answer to that response, and that clarifies what it is exactly that you're providing. So now you can prepare your submittal package. You prepare that submittal package, you send it in, you wait the number of weeks to get it, reviewed and approved. Once it's approved, then you can order your material. Once it gets on site, then you're ready to go for installation. That's just a quick kind of overview of how that goes. And then even further than that, when you're out there installing, you may find some field conditions that differ than what's shown on the drawings, and there's you another opportunity to write an RFI, ask for clarification, to make sure that you're not making assumptions and you're doing what the contract allows for you to do. The last real quick topic I want to have here is just about commercial project management platforms, and that's where most all of these documents that we talk about now they usually live. And this is it's either going to be a contractual requirement or it may just be something that the general contractor will inform you of after you sign a contract. Hey, we use this particular project management software, and for the most part, all of these softwares that are used are paid for by the general contractor, and then they give the subcontractor the ability to sign on and use it in some capacity. So you can also go out and buy these own individual softwares for your own team to use. If you're small and you're just getting into it, I don't necessarily recommend that. Some of these are pretty expensive, but you will, if you're working commercial construction, you will get on a project where the general contractor uses Procore or Autodesk Construct Cloud, and they will expect you to use it in some ability. So I'm not going to necessarily go through here and show every single button you need to click. There's hours and hours of training that you can find online for all these particular ones, but I do want you to be familiar with these different project management platforms because, again, if you're working in commercial construction, you will get exposed to and most likely will be required to use these in some capacity, specifically for submittals or daily logs and RFIs. Those are the big ones that are now all digital and live in these platforms. So the big ones that you're going to see out there, Procore is probably the most common that everyone, a very large percentage of large general contractors, they're going to use Procore. Autodesk Construct Cloud is another big one. Builder Trend is probably the third biggest one, and it is a little bit more towards smaller, maybe residential, but also a lot of light commercial contractors use that. So those are the three biggest ones that you're gonna see, and all those again are going to be free to use as a subcontractor. Um, and may be required. Rake-in and FieldWire are actually more intended for use as a subcontractor. So if you are looking for a slightly more digital way to keep all of this information rather than using Excel templates, FieldWire and Rake-in are probably the ones I would recommend the most to go use. FieldWire particularly because it actually starts free for a very small section of their software, and then you pay per user to get more access to the rest of their tools. But it is specifically made for more subcontractors. You can do daily reports on there. Um, you can keep submittals and RFIs on there. If you pay enough, you can even get some budget tools on there too. So yeah, FieldWire and Rake-in, if you are looking to get into doing something, I'd go check those two out first. Um, I see Robert says, will the prime have training class to get us up to speed? Yeah, most general contractors, if they're going to require you to use Procore or Construct Cloud, they're going to give you some kind of training. You may have to ask for it. They may not just necessarily offer it, but a good general contractor, if they're requiring you to use that, will be more than happy to show you how to use it. The purpose of these softwares is to get everybody kind of on board together. And they're very good at it, but yeah, you do have to do it. So I do that as a general contractor all the time. I'll say, hey, we do all of our pay applications through Procore. And it is easier than doing paper copies, but I understand it's different. So the first time we're going to do a pay application, if you want to call me up and let's have a Zoom call and I'll walk you through it, let's do that. So definitely ask that. If it's the first time you've used one of these softwares, 100% ask. And most of them will be happy to show you how to use these softwares. So we're kind of running up short on time here. I was hoping to have 10, 15 minutes for questions. That is the end of my slideshow here. Are there any particular questions about submittals, RFIs, project management software in general that I can address in the last couple of minutes that we have here? Um, while if anyone is typing in the chat there, I will just say the kind of key takeaways I want you to make sure to get from this is that documentation is not just, it's not just busy work. While yes, it is a hassle, it does protect you and your company. Cost-wise, it manages your risk. So make sure that you do take that stuff seriously. The timing of a lot of these is critical, particularly submittals, making sure that you understand the timeline and you get that in appropriately. And yeah, you just want to get in the habit of it. If you're going to work in the commercial world, these things, while they may be painful to get through sometimes, are table stakes. You're going to be required to do this. I'm going to send out this slideshow too. Both this one and all four of the presentations I do will get distributed. So if you missed one of the slides or two, you'll get a whole copy of it. Um, yeah, you're welcome. Just a couple minutes left. If there or any questions, I'll hang out. If not, I think that's probably it.
I'm going to chime back in.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. It's Suzanne, and I do hope that you were really excited by this presentation. I always, and many of you don't know, I am not a contractor, but I love working with you all and providing you with services like what we're doing with this cohort. If you think of things as we go through the next several sessions, particularly as it relates to any of the trainings that you receive from any of the trainers, send that information back to me and we will try to get you answers. You also will be given a couple of surveys, which you've not yet gotten, a survey that's going to rate the trainer. So if you participated in the session, we definitely want your feedback on the trainer. And then we're going to have at the very, very end, you're going to have a um, survey that asks you to just really rate the whole cohort. As I mentioned a couple of times in the chat, all of the sessions are recorded. And I'm going to actually stop this.